Man, how has addiction affected me? I think for me personally, man, you'd have to go like way back. This isn't something that just kind of recently affected my life. Even thinking way back to when I was a kid, I remember my father leaving when I was really young. Grew up in a pretty big family, man, 5 siblings, and you know, at some point when I was very young, I don't remember how old I was, but my father and mother, they got a divorce, and my father ended up moving across the country. And so years and years would go by with me never talking to him, not really knowing who he was, not knowing what kind of guy he was. And you know, any kid growing up, man, you know, they want to know who their dad is, they want to know where they came from, you know, all that stuff. And I remember my oldest brother at one point, he actually convinced my mother to let him leave Cleveland and go to Colorado and stay with my dad, really live with my dad. And so he moved out there, and then after that, my second oldest brother ended up moving out there. And so, you know, I was next in line in a sense, and I'm like, man, I really would like to know my dad. And so I begged my mother, you know, you gotta let me go, you gotta let me go. I want to meet him, I want to know what he's like. And at this point, you know, I'd saw him maybe a few times growing up, but not very much. Talked to him once every blue moon on the phone. And so in my mind, you know, as these years have gone by, you know, I've got this romanticized, you know, picture in my mind of who he is, what he's gonna be like, you know, all the things he's gonna take me to do, you know, and all the time we're gonna spend together. We're gonna be in the backyard playing baseball, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so I get out there, and you know, to this day I can't say that there isn't good things about my dad, but the romanticized picture and view that I thought he was gonna be was nothing further from the truth. I got out there and I realized my brothers had been being abused, getting beat up all the time. My father was, at that point, he was pretty much a raging alcoholic. He smoked weed pretty much every single day. And I remember growing up and me and my brother, my 2 older brothers, experiencing this, and us becoming angry and thinking like, man, like, he's got time to smoke weed. You know, there's this one dude he would hang out with, and he would always go to his house, and you know, anytime we wanted to do stuff, there was never time. But you know, for some reason, you know, he found time to go hang out with his friend. And we realized after, you know, watching that this was the guy that he got high with. And so we began to resent the weed as a kid. We began to resent the alcohol. And I remember me and my brother sitting there, man. I remember it like clear as day. I can remember exactly like the day, the moment, the time. We're sitting there and we're looking at each other and we're saying, dude, I will never be like my dad. And I hate him. And you know, we go back and forth of all the things we were gonna do different, you know, when we grow up, and I'm never gonna be like him, and I hate weed, and I can't believe he's drinking, you know. And so we would take his weed and we would find it and we would throw it outside, man. We'd find his pipes and we'd take his pipes and we'd throw them into the woods. And then, you know, it's funny, he would try to ask us where it's at, but you know, we're young kids, so he doesn't want to say, hey, where's my stash of weed, you know. So he would say, hey, have you seen this this red container that has this or that, you know. And he wouldn't like say it, and so we'd mess with him and be like, no, can you describe it a little more? I'm not sure what you're talking about, you know. And just mess with him. And finally he realized we were screwing with him, and realized we were flushing his stuff down the toilet and throwing his pipes and all that kind of stuff. And we started getting beat for it, man. Every time he'd find out we'd do it, we'd get beat. And so we began to resent it even more. I remember growing up and there not really being much to eat. You know, we weren't starving, we had food to eat, but you know, nothing really, you know, sustainable, nothing that would like really fill you up. But for some reason, man, we'd go in that fridge and there wouldn't be, you know, much to choose from, but there was always like a fresh case of beer, you know. And same thing with the weed, you know, we began to resent the beer and like, I'll never do that and I'll never be like that. And something very strange, dude, happened, man, as time went on. My oldest brother, he started partying, man. He started drinking. And I'll never forget the day my second oldest brother, who's younger than the oldest, I'll never forget the day that this happened. I remember going into my room, and I was cleaning the room, and I forget what I was doing, but I remember I lifted up his mattress for some reason, and underneath his mattress was all this beer. There was all these cans of beer that were like stashed in his mattress. And so, you know, at first I'm thinking, oh yeah, well maybe this is, you know, maybe he's just getting dad back and he's taking all of his beer and he's gonna throw it away, you know, and all this kind of stuff. And then, but I found out over time that, you know, he wasn't doing that. I found out that he was drinking it. And I'll never forget, man, like I was devastated. You know, here we had made this pact as brothers, and you know, I'll never be like that and I'll never become like that. And something crazy happens in life. It's those things that we say that we'll never do that a lot of times, like, we actually become we become the very thing that we hate. And there's no, I don't think there's any greater deception when you think about it. Like, the thing that you fixate on, the thing that you think about, the thing that you say, man, I'll never do that, I'll never be like that person, you know. You know, that was who my brother became. And I remember my brother, him having mood swings and you know, getting in fights and all this stuff happening. And so over time, like, dude, we became the very people that we didn't want to be, you know. And so I was next in line, and I said, well, I'm not gonna be like my brother, you know. I'm not gonna get high, I'm not gonna drink. And you know, before long, I was smoking weed and I was drinking. And you know, at one point, both of my brothers were pretty much full-blown alcoholics. You know, I was pretty much a drug addict. And it's crazy, man. Like, the thing that you hate, that you say you'll never become, it's crazy how very slowly and subtly over time, if you're not careful, like, you'll become that person that you hate. And so what begins to happen is you become that person that you hate. You know, you start doing the things that you said you would never do. And I think that's something that is distinct, that happens with addiction. You know, nobody wakes up and says, hey, you know, one day I want to be a crack addict. One day I want to be hooked on heroin and I want to overdose and I want to die, you know, at 26 years old. It just doesn't happen that way. It happens very subtly. And I would say it was the same for me. You know, I didn't start off just jumping full in doing drugs. I started doing little stuff and just started not caring, and maybe it's not that big of a deal, and you begin to rationalize in your mind, well, everyone else is this and that, and everyone else seems to be having a good time. And you know, before you know it, you find yourself in a place that you thought you would never be. You find yourself doing things you thought you'd never do. And I remember, you know, as that path began to get worse for me, you know, I was 16 years old. I was eating, you know, Vicodin and Soma like they're candies. Like, you know, like I tell people all the time, you know, I pop pills like they were coming out of a Pez dispenser. I began popping pills. I remember in one summer I ate a whole entire sheet of acid. And it's just like, man, how in the world do you go from, you know, being the young kid, you know, playing baseball in his yard, you know, all these dreams and aspirations, and then you find yourself, you know, just completely drugged out, man, eating a whole sheet of acid. I remember one time I overdosed from acid, and I basically went into a coma. They had to pump my stomach. They basically had me on life support at one point, and I was in a coma for about 2 days, and they told my mother at one point, hey, I don't know if your son's gonna come out of this. I don't know if he's gonna survive. And the crazy thing is, like, it messes your mind up so much. I remember I eventually came out of the coma, and I get out of the hospital, and I remember I was so wasted out of my mind that even after I was out of the coma, I was high for like 7 days. And you think, like, hey, this almost happened to me at 16. I almost died, like my life almost ended. I remember seeing my mother in tears, people standing at my hospital bed, and you would think that would be enough, but I remember like a week later, you know, eating more acid. And it's crazy, man. It's crazy how that stuff happens. And I remember, you know, smoking weed, getting high, popping pills, popping acid. And the crazy thing is you start turning into a person that you would never have been. I remember some of the stuff I did, and you know, I would never blame it on drugs. It was my decision. But that path kind of, it takes you down a road, man, that like you start doing some foul stuff. You start thinking in a way that like you just stop caring. You know, I tell people all the time, like, the thing that messed me up more with drugs than anything, it wasn't that, hey, like, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna kill someone for drugs, or, you know, that I'm necessarily even gonna overdose, you know, because the reality is not everybody overdoses. The reality is some people, they actually manage their addiction to an extent, you know. But I think the most dangerous thing about it was, like, I stopped caring about stuff that really mattered. You know, the things that were important to me, the dreams that I had, the future that I saw for myself, like the good friends that I had around me at one time, like the friends, I stopped caring. I turned into a person that where none of that stuff really mattered. And I think that's really the most dangerous thing, is you just stop caring about what's important. And for me, you know, that path of addiction and abuse, you know, that led me down a road not just to do it, but to sell it. And so I found myself at 16, you know, selling hard drugs, selling crack cocaine, selling acid, selling pills. And some of the stuff that I saw, you know, over those 5 years of being a drug dealer, like they've scarred me. Like, if I sit here and I think about, man, you remember that time when that woman walked into that dope house you were selling, and she had her kid with her right next to her, December 26th, the day after Christmas, and her kid's crying, and she's got his brand new Nintendo or his brand new Sega Genesis, but you know, this is old school, man, his brand new 64, whatever it was, you know, holding it and wanting to sell me her kid's PlayStation for crack. You know, like it ruins me. You know, some of the people that I knew when I met and I started dealing to them, they were normal people, and over time, like, they started selling their bodies. You know, some of the other people that I met along the way, they would do anything for crack. You know, they would rent you their car. It didn't matter if you had a license. It didn't matter. You know, hey, give me a 20-piece, man. You can take it. You know, I remember meeting people who were very successful. You know, they lived in nice neighborhoods, and over time, it's like this cancer. Like, everything looks okay on the outside, and you look like you're fine. You know, and they're living in this nice neighborhood, and you know, they don't fit the description of a drug dealer, or I'm sorry, they don't fit the description of a drug addict. But what happens is, over time, it's like this cancer on the inside, and eventually it comes out and it eats everything up. And I remember meeting these people that, like, they were wealthy, established people, and just seeing that progression over 2 years, like, just this cancer just eat and rob everything from their life. And you know, and then me being the source of the cancer, me being the person who's selling the cancer, me, like, seeing kids who, just like I was angry because my dad, you know, was spending his money on drugs and alcohol. Here I am, I'm the dealer who's now creating this situation for another kid, you know, and seeing kids in people's houses, like, that don't have much to eat because their parents spent it all on crack, and you know, there's roaches everywhere, and it's just nasty and filthy, and you know, people losing their jobs, and their marriage is falling apart, and just the greed of the money, you know. The greed that, like, you become so greedy that you're making all this money that it's almost like you stop even caring about, like, just another human life. And so you see these people, and you see them, and you know, dude, you know that these people, like, they're gonna die, man. Like, you know their family is gonna fall apart. You know, when you're selling these drugs, as you're watching this in front of your own eyes, you're seeing you are destroying this family. Like, you are scarring this young girl that her mother is strung out, and you just don't care. And for me, like, that was the thing that, like, really messed me up, is I started looking at all this stuff, and I'm like there's something so foul that, like, this doesn't bother me. You know, I remember the hunger for money getting so strong that, like, for days on end, I wouldn't take a bath, I wouldn't brush my teeth because I didn't want to miss a sale, and it turned me into a monster. And it's like a cancer. It eats everything in its path. And you know, unfortunately, over these past, you know, 5-10 years, you know, I saw people overdose. I saw friends die. I saw people become completely strung out and change who they are. I saw families destroyed. I saw people get murdered. You know, I experienced all this stuff, man, and it's like, for some reason, like, the greed of dealing, it kept going, and I'm so blinded. Like, I'm 16 years old and people are trying to murder me. Like, I got people driving past my house with assault rifles, but the love of the money, man, it consumed me, and I didn't care. I was willing to take the risk. And I think from any angle, whether you're a kid and you're witnessing your parents like strung out, like the devastation from that, or you're the kid growing up seeing that, I'll never be like that, and then you become that kid. Or then as you grow up, you say, I may do the drugs, but I'll never deal. And before you know it, you find yourself dealing. And the sad part, I would say, that bothers me more than anything is there's people I know that, they didn't do near the amount of drugs I did. They didn't deal drugs like I did. And one time, man, the first, the second, third time getting high, the first, second, third time of dealing and trying to, become this dealer, they get murdered. They overdose. Their lives are gone. And so it just blows my mind. I think about, I ask myself the question, like why am I still here? Like why didn't they kill me? Why did I come out of the overdose? Why did I come out of the coma? Why have I been given an opportunity to change and to find a way out when all these families have been destroyed? Like I was the direct source of the poison. And so it's crazy, man. I think about that and it really bothers me. It really bothers me. But I'm thankful to God that I'm alive, and I'm thankful that I've been given the opportunity, and I try with everything that's in me, man, to give back and to go into some of those same areas and places and share the hope and share the life and share the freedom that I found. And over time I've met some of the people I used to deal with, and I've been able to share with them the transition and the transformation that's happened in my life. And I had somebody contact me recently. She was one of the young girls that lived in the crack house that I sold drugs out of, and I've been able to help her and encourage her and tell her, I'm sorry, I'm sorry for doing that. I'm sorry for destroying your family, and it wasn't right, and you should have never went through that. And she says, seeing the path that my life has taken, it inspires her. And so I guess in some sense I've been able to give back, but man, like I still ask myself the question, why? Like, why me? Why did I make it? And it's just amazing, man. And so for me, I guess if there's anything that I could say to those people who may be watching this, that they've been through some things. Maybe they were the kid that grew up, that your parents were addicts, and you became that same person, you said you would never be. I just want to let you know that it sucks. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Maybe you're the person watching this and you're addicted, man. You're still strung out, and it's not that you don't want to be free. And that's the thing that drives me crazy, is like some people look at people that are addicted or alcoholics or whatever, and they look at these people and they think like they like it, like they want to be there. And don't get me wrong, there's probably some people that do, but like the reality is most people that are living in that, man, they don't want that. They want to be free. They want to change. They don't want to live like that. But that's all they've ever known. That's all they've ever seen. And so they don't know what to do. They feel trapped. And in the end, at the end of the day, man, like I am convinced that there is a God, there is a creator, that he loves you, man, and he doesn't want you to feel trapped. He doesn't want you to feel hopeless. And for me, not to get all spiritual or anything, but for me, like that was the core of like what brought me out of that. Because I describe it to people like this. If you go back to ancient times, looking at the Old Testament, the Hebrew scriptures, very old writings, that have been around for thousands of years, and you look at the word sorcery, and sorcery was one of the things that people would do when they would worship false gods, is they would engage in this activity where they would it's kind of like they were opening themselves up, and so they would do all this stuff, and they would basically call these gods to come and to meet them and to basically possess them in a sense. And so it seems very old, seems very archaic, like this is crazy, why would people ever do that? They're in the wilderness cutting themselves, they're burning children. I mean, all this crazy stuff people would do back in those days, and but the crazy thing is the root word for the word sorcery is the word pharmakia. It's where we get our word pharmacy, and so what I'm convinced of, what I want to share with you, is like this idea that when you begin to take drugs and you begin to take things that alter your consciousness and your state of mind, it's kind of like, in a sense, you're inviting all this stuff to kind of take over, in a sense, and you're inviting, it's almost like you're inviting this destruction to inhabit your life. And the reality is, if somebody told me that, I probably wouldn't have believed them. But looking back on my life and looking back on like all the hell that I went through when I was addicted, like I can see the truth in that now, and I can see, like, in a sense, that's kind of what I did, was I invited this way of life. I invited this destruction. I invited this darkness that, in a sense, it's kind of like you're trying to walk through the fog. Your mind's foggy. You forgot what kind of person you were. You turn into this person that you don't know who you are, and you forget the things that matter. You forget what has value. And so you find yourself in this fog, and you're struggling, and you're fighting, trying to get out. And so what I believe the Creator comes to do, and what Jesus comes to do, is Jesus comes to like lift the fog, man. He comes to remove the destruction. He comes to remove the heaviness, the darkness, the oppression, the fogginess in the mind. I remember my mind being so foggy, and like, man, like I can't even remember what I did, 2 hours ago. I can't even remember where I was going, and like, just going through all this stuff. And so I just want to let you know, man, that like there's a God who loves you. There's a God who understands your struggle. He is not detached from this world. He is not unmoved by your condition, and he's close, man, and he loves you, and he just wants you to know that he can turn the lights on. He can bring you out of the fog, and he can bring you into a reality and a consciousness and a life and a freedom and a hope, man, that you never realized was possible. The scripture in the Old Testament, Jeremiah, it says, Jeremiah 29:11 says, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, plans to give you a future and a hope and an expected end. And so maybe someone's never told you that. Maybe you don't believe that there's a possibility for you to have a future after what you've struggled with, or what you've experienced, or what you've been through. I want to let you know that, like, according to scripture, man, he has a plan and a hope for you. He has an expected end, and his expected end for you is not for you to die early. His expected end for you is for you not to stop caring about things that matter. His expected end for you and his hope for you is not for you to lose your dreams and to stop dreaming. His expected end for you is more than just a life of addiction. And so, I just want to let you know, man, you're not alone. Freedom is possible. Unfortunately, on March 22nd, 1997, my older brother Larry went to a club, hang out with some friends and have some drinks, and ends up getting in a fight, and he was stabbed 8 times, and he bled to death. Never saw him get buried, never went to the funeral. He was my brother, he was my friend, he was my hero.